All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's still your #1 financial as well as economic and business television, business program on television, Moneyline with Nancy. Joining me right now, my guest, Hamzat Lawal, is the Chief Executive Officer at Connected Development. He's joining me to my immediate right. Hamzat, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. You thought I forgot? I didn't know.
No, thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
Happy birthday. I wish you many more years of grace and blessings.
Amen.
And of strength
Thank you.
to continue with what you're doing.
Thank you.
Monday, Osasah is the Acting Executive Director, African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development, a policy analyst. In fact, the last time I saw Mr. Osasah is up to like 7 years old. Or so or more. Mr. Osasah, how are you?
I'm good.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Where have you been?
I've been around.
You've been around?
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's get started. We're looking at the state of the nation and all of that. You know, just like at the beginning of the program, I did talk about what some of my guests have told me here at the table, you know, issues that we're to look at even before the elections and all of that. But I'll start with you, Hamzat, because before the elections, just was it a day or so to the elections, you were here. And we're actually talking about even issues that will shape the ballot, how will Nigerians vote. We tried to like forecast with the data we have and all of that. Let me start by asking you, do you think that some of the forecasts that we even saw before the elections, looking at the voter registration data, for example, 84 million people, close to 84 million people that came out to pick their PVCs across demography, across even gender, across different sectors, housewives, artisans, business people. But we didn't get to see that during the elections. You were on the field. Tell us why.
You know, interestingly, I'm not really sure, and it's really sad. Because if you look at the data, we didn't even get, we just got less than 50% of voter turnout, about 37.45% of people that actually came out to cast their ballots. That's during the presidential and national assembly. Well, that of the governor and state assembly data is not yet out. But yes, votes were shaped based on issues, particularly around how has the economy affected people, how are they ensuring that they would vote for candidates that represent their ideal, that would provide access to education, water, and what have you. But what we experienced on the field was not what we envisaged or expected. I think one contributing factor was the fact that the election was postponed. I think it really impacted turnout and how citizens perceive INEC as an institution. And particularly also the fact that politicians actually tried to undermine the credibility and the entire value chain of the elections. Taking experience, even particularly from the governorship and state assembly elections. That of presidential, we saw a bit of peace and, you know, voter turnout and lesser security challenge and lesser ballot box snatching and also vandalizing electoral materials. But that of the governorship and state assembly elections, even our observers got attacked and beaten in some states. You know, we saw incidents where journalists were adopted. They abducted, you saw incidents where INEC officials were adopted, where they were intimidated and harassed to even declare results in very, very tense atmosphere. So it's really quite sad and unfortunate. But I believe that there is an opportunity here, and as we discuss more, I will share some of those brilliant ideas.
You know, it's just like a guest of mine said some time ago, last week or thereabouts, he did say that we need to get our electoral process right. Because if our electoral process is not right, it's like the foundation is not clear. The foundation is not very strong for every other thing to be built on. Mr. Osasah, talk to me about, you know, your own view. What's your own assessment, not perception now. What's your own assessment of the whole situation?
Well, my assessment of the entire thing, talking about the election, there are some in the positive, there are some in the negative. But I think that the positives are even overwhelmed by the negative. The positive is in respect of the fact, yes, we said we are going to hold election in 2019 and it did hold. That is positive for me. And INEC asked for money and they were given. That was positive for me. And then materials were procured, and there was this thinking too that INEC was ready for the election. And they were, in actual sense, they were ready. That for me was also positive. But what are the negatives? The negatives are that, yes, we knew and came out with a timetable, but we didn't follow the timetable from a project management perspective. And so we had a timetable, knowing that the election is supposed to hold the first election, February 16th, and then you come to tell Nigerians that for logistics reasons, in spite of the huge budgetary allocations given to INEC, that logistics is a factor for postponement. I don't understand that. It means that in the first instance, we were not prepared in the first instance. And then secondly, the elections were postponed. The bitter part of it really was the fact that for accredited observers, that INEC itself knew the number of organizations that were accredited, they knew the number of observers under each observer organization. And then you go to INEC to collect your kits. Kits are not available. Tags are not available. In some states, where you are given the apron, you'll be denied the face cap. In some states, they just give you only the tag.
What were the reasons given?
No reason was given. The materials were not enough.
Despite the budgetary
despite the huge budgetary allocation to INEC. And I think that this is not something to celebrate at all. And it shows that we are also not serious as a country. How can you have this number of observer organizations and you also gave them accreditation letters only for them to come to your office and you say there is no material? And this is happening few days to the election. It doesn't show seriousness to me. It doesn't show seriousness on the part of the leadership of INEC. And I think that all the different departments of INEC must wake up so that this does not repeat itself. It doesn't give us value for money in the first instance.
Because that's why I'm actually x-raying this. That is after these elections. If indeed we're having value for money in terms of our electoral processes, even in terms of checking the politicians, so to speak, then our critical stakeholders, because as we go to elect the so-called politicians, they are the ones that, that make these policies and all of that. You actually did say at the beginning that there are some positives for you, for the fact that this year we had the elections. We had the elections, for the fact that, you know, budgetary provision was given to them. Don't you think that we should move beyond? Because I see those things as primary, that those are the things that are, you know, they are sacrosanct, that they must be done. It's like we are still, is the elementary part of it. Should we be celebrating that? Because if we are serious as a country, like you said, we should be talking about the more secondary things than, okay, let's celebrate 2019, we had an election.
No, but I also mentioned to you.
Yes, I understand that.
That the negatives have overwhelmed the positive. And I don't also understand. If you look at the last election that just had on Saturday, Hamzat talked about the level of apathy. That apathy didn't just come. There were factors that led to it. And one of the factors is because the citizens' expectations didn't go the way the citizens' expectations weren't confirmed, as it were, in the first election. And so they saw it. What is the big deal coming out to go and vote when at the end of the day my vote is not going to count?
But isn't it also tricky, which I asked one of my guests yesterday, isn't it also tricky because democracy is the government of the people, for the people, by the people, isn't it?
Yes.
But citizens are feeling, okay, their votes did not count in the first one. So how come we had the result that President Buhari was declared re-elected? Are you seeing that tricky thing? You still, or Hamzat? Okay,
I think for me, and this goes to everyone, we must also take a bit of the blame, in the sense that most of the campaign and the conversation, even before the elections, were centered around the presidential elections. It was centered around the two major political parties. A lot of people did little or none about governorship and the importance of electing someone who would govern a state or state assembly, who would run their affairs and provide oversight to the executive at the state level. And for me, when, again, from experience on the field, when citizens came out en masse to vote during the presidential elections, one of the reasons why we experienced voter apathy, particularly in the governorship, was when you look at the collation of results, the transmitting and collation of results. That is where manipulation usually happens, and that is where a lot of people don't have confidence in the entire value chain of INEC's process. Yes, we've deployed technology using smart card reader and permanent voters card for verification. But these results are still being collated manually. We watched on TV when results are being announced. Most of these returning officers came with a piece of paper, reading out results manually. And it tells you that once you work on an election result manually, it means that it could be tampered with. It could, people can manipulate that entire process. There could be a lot of
margins of error.
Before now, we've had a conversation and dialogue with INEC and say, why can't we electronically transmit this result? For instance, let me bring in the United States of America, because that's where we always reference when we talk politics. In the US, as soon as you cast your ballot, results are being transmitted electronically. In real time in your house, you would see the result trickle down, and you would know what state a candidate is winning or where he's leading. You would see the results in real time. And mind you, if you look at the cancelled votes, and it's even worse during the gubernatorial and state assembly, and that's why now a lot of states, their results are being declared inconclusive, which means that INEC would have to do a rerun. And this also have an implication to our resources that are depleting. So why are we having inconclusive election? Because even electorate themselves are not adequately educated. If you look at ballot paper, when you look at even the sensitization before the election, as much as INEC did a lot, and civil society even did much more, a lot of citizens still thumb printed, across party lines. A lot of people didn't even know that after you thumb print, you have to wait a bit or even blow it so that it would dry, and how you fold it. So, and when you watch TV, even the politicians were making mistakes in thumb printing and and folding their ballot paper into the ballot box. So I think for me, as much as we say, yes, we're integrating technology, it must be fully integrated, because we cannot live in a digital age and still work using analog.
Now, let me read this tweet that I just got that someone, a viewer, sent. Wachuku Emeka says, that's at Wachukum, says, please, let's tell ourselves the truth. This utopian digital voting arrangement you guys bandy cannot work at the moment. Nigeria is not only the urban center, and the lack of dependable infrastructure is a stark reality. Our problem is politicians, not the system.
I don't understand that.
Should I?
No.
Okay.
It's not as if I don't understand.
He's saying that the system,
when you talk about the system, this is where I disagree with quite a lot of people. For instance, the ATM card that we're using today is a technology that the banks came up with to ease their business. And we are seeing the effectiveness of it. And I don't think the bank is even bigger than this country. In my opinion, what people are supposed to be asking for, what does it take for INEC to be fully automated? What does it require? What are the skill sets that are required? And how much do we need to make this, this automation come to pass? Those are the questions that we should be asking. And then, when you brought the technology of the card reader, what was the intention? Was the intention to remain analog or to graduate the election process into digitalization? So, sitting here and somebody is telling me we don't have the infrastructure or we don't have this, I think those are lame excuses.
Or some people would also say that we have a lot of, you know, people that are of the informal sector, they don't know how to read and write, our literacy level is low. The issue of infrastructure, which he actually brought in, the issue of how can you tell that village woman how to use digital stuff.
If I may,
you know, because that's been the argument when we say, why not replicate what is happening in the financial system, even in that rural community?
Exactly.
There's what we call agent banking, you know, and all of that.
If I may, Nancy, today in every household in Nigeria there's a mobile phone.
NCC just
every
told us
household is a
172
mobile
million
phone.
active subscribers in Nigeria.
But not all of them are connected to the internet.
Yes.
But then there is a mobile phone. That woman who fries akara has a mobile phone.
Yes.
That woman who is in the grassroots, who is a farmer, local farmer, she has a smartphone. I know my colleague have talked about the human capacity part of it and also the financial part. One part that is missing is the legal and regulatory part.
Parts of it.
Why I might agree with the guy who tweeted is the fact that, and when we talk about the legal and regulatory part, it means that we have to go to the National Assembly. And what does it take to amend our constitution? We go to the National Assembly, we need to get to first we need to get someone who moved the motion and who sponsored a bill, or sponsor a bill. And then we get to third majority vote at the Senate and the House of Rep. But mind you, we need to go to the State Assembly and get to third majority. Then before you have the president assent on it, and then it becomes a law. And that process itself is cumbersome. And it has to do with politicians. For me, I would say citizens must increase demand. Because, you know, our politics and our democracy is evolving. And it should always center around citizens. So the more citizens demand, the more politicians and people in public office would actually supply those demands. Because for me, and again, there's an opportunity. Yes, even if we have an infrastructural deficit, it means that if we want to fully automate or digitalize our election, it means that, one, we need to invest more to ensure that we have the ICT upgraded. So it means, one, we're even creating value and jobs.
Exactly.
We're ensuring that we're increasing penetration of access to internet. So it means that, you know, there will be enormous opportunity.
Well, so don't you think one way or the other, access to jobs may just be reduced? Because what technology does is that it reduces the number, your overheads, so to speak, in the longer term. I'm looking at the longer term of it. You know, we may not need an INEC chairman that will come to ICC Collation Center and waiting for all the papers to come.
But, you know, even the job sector is evolving.
Yes.
It's moving fast. So we have to catch the pace, or else the world will leave us behind. So what this means is we need to look at new set of opportunities and new set of skill set that we would have to integrate.
That's what it will do.
Yes. So what this means also is it will create jobs to get us lecturers or people who would go and study new line of faculties, so that they would now build a new generation of new skill set that are ICT inclined. So as much as we'll lose jobs, we'll create more jobs, and most importantly, we'll create value that ensure that the system is trustworthy and credible.
Okay. Monday, I'll come to you in a bit. Let's quickly take a break. And when we come back from the break, the discussion continues as we're scrutinizing Nigeria's electoral process with all the monies we've spent. Over 200 billion naira. That's for INEC. We've not talked about how much the politicians have spent, or who calibrates that, actually. All right, let's quickly take this break. But don't forget, you can join us on all our social media channels. Find and follow me right now on Twitter. We just told you almost everyone has this kind of mobile device. NCC says 172 million of us right now are active subscribers. So find and follow me right now on Twitter. Send your comments, your questions and opinion, or Moneyline AIT. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Hamzat Lawal, the Chief Executive at Connected Development, and Monday Osasah, Acting Executive Director, African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development. That is a not handful, mouthful full. That means you're doing everything. Leadership is a whole lot. Strategy is a different thing, which we are talking about. What's the strategy for INEC? Development, how do we move the country forward? So a mouthful and a handful for you at the center. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, we're still talking about scrutinizing the electoral process. Just before the break, Hamzat, you know, you made mention of how we can actually integrate technology. Do you have something else to say in that line?
Yeah, I have something else to say.
Okay.
And it is about the fact that in every home in Nigeria, there's no one home without a television. And almost all the homes have connected to this digital television.
Or if there's not TV, there's a radio.
Or there's
Well,
a viewing center.
No, they have viewing centers all over the place. Just like we have
But there are some homes, there are no TVs.
Just like we have jam centers in almost every part of Nigeria. We can do similar thing for elections. And so for every village, you have a center where they go. The place is properly digitalized, and people are trained on what to do during elections. And immediately you press, it goes straight to the server. And I think that that is a technology we need to give some thought. And by the time we do that, it's going to change the game for us. What we need to do is just to open discussions with the service providers that this is what we plan to do, because impossible is nothing. In other words, there's nothing that is not possible. Let it just enter your mind, and then you give some action to it. The possibility is sure. So I think that INEC should go a little bit further, discuss with these service providers that this is our thinking, and see how the service provider can also be part of this conceptualization. And I think that once we are able to do that, we'll begin to see some little successes in our elections. Mind you, why this is important? It's important because if you look at all that transpired in these 2019 elections, it has helped to reverse all the gains that we have over the years. And that for us does not show growth. And that for us too also threw up some elements that may not necessarily take us to where our intended destination is as a nation. Because it is often said that the progress that any country can make is a function and quality of its political leadership. And that is why we are passionate about the electioneering process in Nigeria. And I think that whatever we need to do to make it work, we must do it.
Now, do you see, okay.
Just one instance. Now, people, if you look at all the things that transpired, there is a trend that is almost burgeoning now, which is the trend of vote buying. And if you ask some people, they are telling you vote buying is not in the Electoral Act. Vote buying is not in the Constitution. What does that mean? It means that there are a lot of things that our laws didn't anticipate. But even though our law didn't anticipate them, it doesn't mean that we are not guided by our conscience. Our conscience should tell us that this is not good. Because if you take money from somebody who you know will not deliver, because you have taken that money, you are under obligation to go and vote for the person. So there are a whole lot of things that Nigerians need to wake up to and ensure that our elections go the way it is supposed to go.
Now, you talked about the political leadership, which is very, very key, or the political class. Do you think that the current political leadership that we have would deliver us from these challenges? Vis-a-vis that they are also part, what of you are smiling? I don't know. Vis-a-vis that they are also part or perhaps recipients of the system.
Okay, I will answer it this way.
Yes.
You know, in development, we are told that for any country that wants to make progress, emphasis should be placed on 4 key areas. One is education. Second is agriculture. Third is infrastructure. And the fourth is health. If I see any government that will deliver all of this for me, I'm fine. Because these are areas that relate directly to the people. So if you give me education, I'm sure of making progress. I'm sure of fulfilling my potentials. If I have good hospital, Hamzat we were just discussing before coming to studio. He was telling me he visited some states, as rural as they are, there are no primary healthcare centers.
But we seem to be a country that we do not learn from our mistakes. In fact, we bask in it, we talk about it for a while, and it goes. The next 4 years again, we repeat it. So it's like same old, same old. He did talk about project management earlier. Where does all that come in?
I think for me, it's about trust.
Trust on? Trust
of the system. Trust between government and the people. Trust between government and the organized private sector. Trust between communities, among society. What is the major cause of apathy? It's lack of trust. I think that we need to start from the fundamentals. We need to have a conversation. We need to dialogue. And most importantly, we need to heal as a nation. There have been a lot of disagreement, but they've not been agreements where we would have a dialogue where people would even say, okay, let's agree and say enough is enough and move forward, as a society.
But there was a dialogue that was put together by former President Goodluck Jonathan.
The political reform conference.
Yes, that brought a lot of people. That also took huge sums of money, over 6 billion naira.
But what has happened
and
to
the recommendation, I think, should be in one shelf now. So is that not also part of the process? And in all of this, money is going.
The irony is, and I think citizens need to understand that we are on the losing side as citizens. One, we're the ones who have paid tax, and it is our tax money that have been enacted or budgeted and released to INEC and other institutions that are meant to provide service delivery to citizens. So if we don't rise as citizens and ensure that we hold these leaders accountable, we are at the losing side because it affects us more. It does. And I would say that as much as we have all this negative record, I want to talk a bit about particularly sending a shout out to INEC ad hoc staff, which are mostly young people. They're mostly NYC core members. And these are people who run most of the logistics during the elections, who ensure that citizens are not disenfranchised. And I remember the incident in Lagos State, where they had to hold the election to ransom because their money have not been paid to them.
Somewhere in Koshofe.
So it tells you that as a young person, and again, why do we have the apathy? For us, we're a mobile generation. We're a restless generation. Today, a lot of people, when you go to the banking hall, you see lesser queues. Why? Because the banking sector have integrated digital markets where you can sit in your comfort and do a transfer. I think that as much as we're calling on government to make this reform happen, maybe we should look to the organized private sector and the businesses. Mind you, $20 billion come from the diaspora annually. And these people don't even vote. They're disenfranchised because the legal and institutional framework does not allow them to vote. My brother talks about vote buying and vote selling. Yes, we have voter inducement in this constitution. I think as we evolve in our democracy and politics, we need to also ensure that our policy and regulatory framework are in tune with those policies. Let's talk about security, because security is also an integral part of the electoral process. The police have a central role to play, because if the police do not provide protection of the ad hoc staff, protection and security for the electorate, and guarantee safety of lives and property, people would not come out to cast their ballot. Election is supposed to be a celebration. But what we witnessed was people losing loved ones. People who even traveled from the diaspora and came into the country to cast their vote died in the process.
Yes. We should not be celebrating. I think even now as a nation, in as much as these elections have come and gone or are still ongoing, the ones that are inconclusive are inconclusive, we should sit down as a nation, just like you said, and scrutinize the processes. What have we done wrong? What have we done right? How do we get better? Yet the discussions we're having, and that brings me also to the role of the media in all of this. It's my constituency, but I think we should also talk to ourselves sometimes. What do you think that the role of the media should be, especially in the advancement of the social, political, economic development part of this.
Nancy, I'm not speaking for the media, but in a society when there is no equity and justice, there will be no peace. They've been clamped down on the media, deliberately clamped down on the media. So we're not experiencing or we're not enjoying free press. When you don't enjoy free press, what it means is that journalists that are meant to shape issues, that are meant to talk to key stakeholders and amplify issues that affect the country and people in the country and also inform policy and decision making. Once there are no free press, then they would hold back in delivering on their mandate, on their constitution. You know, journalism is a constitutional responsibility, and you guys have a line there. In the Constitution. Yeah. Your role is to inform the citizen, the country at large. So once there is no level playing ground, when there is no enabling environment and you're being clamped down on, what happens is the media will go into their shelves and would not be able to prefer ideas.
Well, that's also helped the situation. Haven't you also seen, or could there also be a situation whereby the media still rises up, even amidst the challenges, amidst the fighting, amidst the clamping down on the media, and say, enough is enough, this must not go on?
I think the media is, in my opinion, they are doing their best. And
the question now is, the best good enough?
Yes, the best may not be good enough, but I think they are doing what they are supposed to do. And in analyzing the role of the media, you also should look at issue of ownership of the media industry. Who are the people that owns the media in Nigeria? And will you want to write a thing that will be offensive to your boss?
The politicians?
Yeah, the politicians own the media. And so all of that now help to shape the type of news that you also see. And just recently, we know that the media plays an important role in the economy. And we felt that what other ways can we further capacitate the media? And we thought that the only way to capacitate the media is to also make them realize that some of these stories that they bring out has a way of heightening already tense situations. And so they need to train them they need to train them on conflict-sensitive reporting became imperative. Because in development, it is also argued that while you are trying to program in a particular community or clime, you must not leave the situation worse than you met it. It comes with the principle of do no harm. And that is why we cannot, as a people, say that the media is not doing what they are supposed to do. Yes, there are instances where they bloated the issues beyond proportion. But I think that without the media, all of these issues that we are discussing here today, you will not even get to know them. And so that gives them a pride of place. However, the information that is also coming from the media also raises for us the issue of accountability, which you talked about earlier. And I think that some of those things, some of those news items, some of those reporting also has given citizens enough information to take forward issues of demanding accountability. But unfortunately, the general populace have not been conscientized enough to take the issue forward. And let me tell you, unless citizens begin to demand real accountability from their election management bodies, we cannot see effectiveness. We cannot see efficiency. All of those things that have made them not to deliver, issues of effectiveness, issue of efficiency, they are driven by accountability. Once you say you are going to be accountable for your action, you see everybody sitting up. But once that is not there, there'll be like a dassical attitude.
Just like you even see in the private sector. That is what we're saying. Can we actually also mirror what's happening in the organized private sector? For example, sometimes in the private sector, you're given targets, you know you have laid down objectives, and if you don't meet it, somebody somewhere will just fire you. At the end of the day, why is the public system that churns out these public policies is not as accountable as that? But I think that will be a show for another day.
I hope we are not. No, that element is very fundamental. For instance, INEC just postponed elections There are a lot of manawa. A lot of people wanted to do their weddings on that day. A lot of activities were postponed. And then nobody is held accountable in all of this. Who are the people responsible for procurement? Nobody. We are not hearing anything. So if we are not holding people accountable, it means we don't have capacity to deter people from doing what is not correct. So they want to perpetuate this thing that they have done, believing that nobody is going to raise any questions. And so it becomes a norm, it becomes a culture that will continue to fester in our public institutions.
All right, let's take these tweets before we go. Olumhense Ahigbe on Twitter says, Lawal Hamzat, always honest and speaking it as it is. That's coming for you. Victor Odo says, I think one of your guests is over-bloating the availability of ATMs and comparing same to effective transition to e-voting. So many villages and communities are still very inaccessible. Secondly, there's still serious trust issues about e-voting. LG says, electronic voting is the best and the only solution to what we are really going through now in Nigeria. They won't implement it only because they want to continue rigging. Our votes were not counted at all. Solution says electronic voting could have been the best option for Nigeria, but it's a pity our politicians will never agree. Honestly, I wish for our country. Lastly, Obinna says, true, our political process must be fully digitalized for us to enjoy the gains of democracy in this country. The process of digitalization must begin now. So many comments coming through, but I think that's the much we can take. I want to say many thanks to both of you for joining me at the table today. I wish you a lovely day. Hamzat, where's the party?
We just finished.
That was a smart way to answer my question. Happy birthday again. I wish you all the best. All right, I've been speaking with Hamzat Lawal, the Chief Executive Officer at Connected Development, and Monday Osasah, the Acting Executive Director, African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development. They've actually been lending their voices to the discussion today on the program. Be the best you can be that change that you also want to see. Join me again tomorrow on this channel, African Independent Television, where we'll keep you up to the minute with everything concerning business, finance, economy, politics, socio-economic development. I think that's what it is. I'll see you all tomorrow. I am Nancy Nnaji. Bye now.